And the revelations about expensive non-commercial travel keep coming for Health and Human Services Secretary Tom Price. The latest report from Politico. Price, accompanied by his wife and top aides, took military jets to major cities around the world, including a 95-minute flight from Berlin to Geneva that cost $16,000, while other department staff flew commercial. To put this in context, Kathleen Sebelius, who spent 5 years as HHS secretary under President Obama, told Politico she never took a military jet and always flew commercially overseas. According to Politico, the combined cost of Secretary Price's non-commercial air travel tops $1 million since May. A White House official tells NBC that trips aboard military jets were approved because Price had no deputy secretary to handle matters while he was overseas, and he needed access to secure communications. So in a statement earlier yesterday, Secretary Price said he will take no more private charter flights, quote, no exceptions. Price avoided an outright apology, instead said, quote, all of my political career I fought for the taxpayers. It is clear to me that in this case I was not sensitive enough to my concern for the taxpayer. Price promised to write a personal check to the U.S. Treasury for the expenses of his private travel. Quote, the taxpayers won't pay a dime for my seat on those planes. And Price appears to have literally meant seat, paying back just a fraction of the cost. Price was asked about all this last night.
And you say in the statement the taxpayers won't pay a dime for my seat on those planes, but you're writing a check for, we understand from your officials, $51,887. The total cost is estimated at more than $400,000 for the 26 flights since May. Is that okay?
Well, as I said, there's an ongoing review being done by the Inspector General, and I think it's important that we wait for that review. All of the trips, as I mentioned, had been approved by the legal department, been approved by the administration department within HHS, been deemed to be appropriate official travel, and so we need to let the Inspector General go ahead and act.
Secretary Price also said he was, quote, not sensitive enough to my concern for the taxpayer. Here are those very concerns in 2009 and 2010 after Democrats in control of Congress approved buying private jets.
I think we've made it halfway where we ought to, and that is cut it from 8 to 4 jets. Now we need to cut it from 4 jets to 0 jets. This is just another example of fiscal irresponsibility run amok in Congress right now.
Well, I want to say to the Speaker, don't you fly over our country in your luxury jet and lecture us on what it means to be an American.
So that was Tom Price first 8 years ago, and the second bite was 7 years ago. Mark Halpern, how big a problem is this for Tom Price? Does he survive it?
It's a big problem. I think if they can find someone else to take his job, he probably won't survive it. But it's not clear to me anyone wants that position right now to be confirmed. The mindset that would cause a cabinet secretary to do this, particularly one with a record of speaking out against government waste and protecting the taxpayers, is just phenomenal. It's just phenomenal. And he can say it was approved all he wants. There's been very little reporting that I've seen about who signed off on this, who generated these requests. But if you're an adult who understands how the world works and you're in the government and you get on that many charter flights, particularly some of the ones to Philadelphia and to Nashville, to places he owned homes, the level of bad judgment is, for many people around the president, disqualifying.
Mark, is it really that big of an obstacle, though, to get rid of somebody and just have an acting secretary there? We don't have a nominee for DHS. Nobody seems to even notice that DHS is headless.
Well, you could have an acting secretary for a while, but in the way the president thinks about these things is he wants smaller problems, not bigger problems.
Yeah, I mean, I guess Noah's question, Yamiche, is for President Trump, who's let it be known through the press that he's annoyed by this, that he doesn't like the behavior of Tom Price. Why let him continue to sit there? And if you listen to Tom Price yesterday, he sounded one of those apologies where I'm sorry there was so much concern about this, not necessarily I'm sorry I wasted taxpayer money.
I think if you're Tom Price, you should definitely be worried about your job. The idea that the president is openly fuming against him, the idea that the president is upset that this really looks bad on him and the people that he surrounds himself with. This is someone who built a campaign, I should say President Trump built this campaign on working class people, on appealing to middle class people, on draining the swamp. And then you have Tom Price now having more and more headlines about how luxurious his travel was, and the idea that he's paying back $51,000 when the price cap could be something like 1 million, it's not hard to understand that there are people that are going to look at that and say, okay, so really he's not actually making an apology. But I think the idea that President Trump is letting him keep his job, at least for now, it goes back to the idea that the president is now already having to deal with the cultural issues, the cultural war issues with the NFL. He's having to deal with Puerto Rico. And then now if he has to fire Tom Price, that to me is just, I think in his mind, he's probably elongating the headlines and hoping that this will just go away.
And it's not just Tom Price. It was Scott Pruitt. We talked about him. Also, Steve Mnuchin. Betsy DeVos, Steve Mnuchin using government private planes. That's all under review. And now a fourth senior member of the Trump cabinet is acknowledging flights on expensive private and military planes. Politico reports that Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke has taken several chartered flights, including a $12,000 trip to his hometown in Montana, as well as flights to 2 Caribbean islands.
What is wrong with these people?
For appearances and interviews, a department spokeswoman said the trips were pre-cleared by the ethics office. In most cases, Nicole, these are small government conservatives who talk about waste, fraud, and abuse, protecting the taxpayer. I don't know. How do you begin to explain it?
One word, Richard Painter. He was the ethics advisor during the Bush years. I couldn't have had a soda with Mark Halperin without having to come back and prove that I paid for my own soda. The idea that these people are getting on private jets. Here's the other thing. When Donald Trump says that I could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and my base would forgive me, he's largely correct. But that does not extend to his crony cabinet. They do not afford the cabinet the same latitude on ethics, on politically incorrect language, on bad press. So he is the only person who can get bad press for his administration. He does not sort of have the latitude to take on water for his cabinet.
It's the bad mindset of the people at the top. They shouldn't be even thinking of getting on these planes. But how could the process exist within these departments? The people in the legal affairs department, the ethics office, how could they possibly sign off on it? It makes no sense.
There's ethics and stupidity. If you go back to Price, and if you're going from Washington to Philadelphia, forget the expense to go to the airport and get on a private jet and then get to Philly and go back. It's actually less time to take an Amtrak. That's the ridiculous thing also, just the efficiency of just how you manage your day, that I need this larger. So that's stupidity on top of moral corruption.
You should probably recuse yourself when talking about private air travel.
People told me these things.
By the way, we mentioned...
Have you been on an Acela?
I love the Acela. By the way, if I'm coming from New York or Washington, I love the Acela.
It's the way to go.
It's great. You get there's the little dishes they bring you, and you meet people.
They don't bring dishes there, we say.
Well, no, I mean, I bring my own dish, and then I put it on.
Oh, I see.
Wait a second.
Yeah, you own dishes?
Warm Spring for like just the 20th.
No, it's the same thing. You just get a sandwich, and it costs $200 more. You just sit in the other one.
We'll
talk about it.
Dish.
Yeah.
We'll tell you all about it, Donnie.
By the way, I want to point out, we mentioned Betsy DeVos's name. She flies her own jet and actually pays for it herself, so she's not lumped in with the rest of them. All right, still ahead on Morning Joe, we'll dig into the White House plan for tax reform and how the proposal might impact the president's own bottom line. Plus, Jared Kushner says he was, quote, eager to share information with members of Congress. Apparently, that didn't involve his reported use of private email for government business. Now, 2 top senators want to know why he didn't mention it.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.